Hello, and welcome back to the review crew once again, where we do album reviews, we do musical topical discussions, and much more. And this particular episode is a musical topical discussion. Uh, this musical topical discussion is how do you approach an established artist with a large discography? So I'll kick it off right off the bat. So the way that I do it is I have a tool. I think it's similar to. Oh, I skipped something. I'm Dennis,
Hey guys, I'm Hattie.
and we are the crew. And, okay, now let's jump.
Started off swimmingly. It's like just as you debate how to approach discography, debate how to open up this segment. So introduce ourselves at the end.
Funny you should say that, Jack. I do. So, similar to the tool that you have, Hattie, is it's a website called bestoveralbums.com.
The poor man's rate your music.
It is. But I like. I'm kind of like. I'm a bit like Jack in that regard. In that I like sort of rough and ready, sort of punkish stuff.
Even with your web design, I don't want the clean.
Yeah, give me that web 2.0.
Right. Want to feel like I'm in 1999.
Exactly. So it's a community driven thing. So most mainstream bands are there. I haven't come across any band that isn't on there. And basically, yeah, it just rates. People just rate individuals rate each album.
User review led.
Yeah.
For clarity. Yeah. Not critics or anything like that.
Exactly. And I basically just pick the top one. So, for example, yeah, when we discuss established artists with a lot big discographies, yeah, we're talking about say Kanye West, who, including the Kids See Ghost stuff, has say 11 albums out. Rush, who have who knows multiple dozens of albums out. AC/DC, again, dozens of albums out. Like, yeah, how do you approach it? So, Hattie, how do you approach an artist with a large discography?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I would have like a one size fits all approach, but I would definitely rely on something. Well, like I said, rate your music would be my main one. Say if I'm like planning, like, okay, right, I'm going to get into this artist, I will use that as a kind of tool or a source for like kind of finding out where to start.
How did you arrive at rate your music?
No damn idea.
You just cannot remember. Came out of the ether.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone recommended it on like another forum or something. I don't know, but I've used it for years and years, which I find it's really good. I've discovered so much stuff from there that I don't know. It's kind of like continued, and even though I disagree with a lot of like things for the user base on there in terms of good albums. Generally, when I go by like the top albums of all time or albums of decades, I'll always find a lot of stuff that I agree with in those lists. So it seems like the general people that go to that site, I share a lot of like similar thoughts with. So yeah, it's a trusted source for me. But yeah, no idea how I found it in the first place.
So the stuff that you discovered, is that stuff that you think you wouldn't have discovered without Rate Your Music, or is it stuff that you think you would have come across anyway?
No, 100%. Like I've definitely had times where I've been like, oh yeah, I want to get into like some new music, gone on there, like picked a genre, because it's really cool how you can filter it by any genre, any decade or year, and I presume Best Ever Albums is the same thing, and it will give you like the user review order for that. So definitely, it's been like, I'm really into this. I don't know, I'm really into like jazz at the moment. Filter it like by the decade and whatever, and then just go work the way from there. It's my probably one of my primary methods to kind of discover new music. Not the only thing, but like definitely something I like to go to, and I like the methodical aspect. I mean, part of the reason why I enjoy doing these podcasts is I like listing, I like ranking things. So something like that is perfect for me. The way my mind works, it matches.
It's interesting that you say that you use it for genres as well, because I don't. Because a couple of years back, I tried to get into punk, and I went down like a different route. So usually, when I want to get into a genre, I'll go down the route of like documentaries, and because from like getting into metal, like big documentaries like Metal Headbanger's Journey. You know, there are some sick like metal documentary, or Anvil, the story of Anvil.
Mm.
There are some sick like metal documentaries out there. So yeah, I tend to go down that route because that's the route I've gone down
Yeah.
In the past. So I wouldn't say I've used best ever albums for getting into genres as much.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth giving it a try when you want to go down that rabbit hole. I'd say. I mean, it's just nice to have like something that's, like I said, methodical, and you can kind of like, you know, filter what you're into at that time. You know, no matter where it is, whether it's like by time or sound. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like how I approach things, I think it will vary. I really do like the idea of like a chronological listen. So literally going from like album one to new. It's not always the best option, but it's nice to hear a band's progression or an artist's progression. And there's examples which I can get into where you kind of like, you know, you see them, you either see them grow up or you see them mature, or you see them diversify their sound bit by bit, and kind of you have the background to that by listening chronologically. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you'll also have like bands or artists where they have a certain sound, and then it flips and they change and become what they are now. Like an immediate example that comes to mind would be Pantera, right? So Pantera started off as like a power metal band. As far as I'm aware, they had like 2 or 3 albums with that kind of sound, and then they became the kind of groove thrash band from Cowboys of Hell from Hell onwards, which is like what, album 3 or 4, and kind of stayed in that sound generally onwards. So if you're gonna like listen to Pantera as someone that's not really into like a power metal sound like me, and you start off with those albums, you're probably going to be really put off. So sometimes, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Terrible cover as well, right? But like, so that's why a tool like a user review tool, or even just like critical reviews, can be good, because you might see you might see reviews or a score somewhere that says, oh, this album is the magnum opus. You know, Cowboys Home Hell is the magnum opus. Start here, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take your word for it, and then maybe you're going to dip and kind of say, oh, I want more of that, so I'm going to go forward. So there's no right answer I have for your question. It depends. But using these tools, using like aggregate websites, using like critic reviews is a good tool to kind of find out where am I going to start, because it does change artist to artist for me.
I'm curious what your take on that is, Jack. Like, do you use tools, or how do you approach an artist with a large discography? Yeah. So
I've muted myself. It's like I didn't have anything to say until then. So yeah, did you mean like finding the artist to listen to in the first place?
Well,
because it sounds like that's what a lot of those websites are for. Or did you mean once I found the artist, how do I pick the order to listen in?
Yeah, say artists you've heard. I was going to say, for example, if you've got examples of artists where you've heard a few tracks from, maybe, you know, you've heard singles, you go, oh, this is really cool, but you know, you don't know what albums they're from, and then you look at like their discography and it's shit tons. You're like, I really want to get into this band / artist. That with those examples, where would you start? Or how?
So if that's the starting point I have, I would find the album that has the most tracks I've already heard that I liked, or the album that has the track I liked the most on it. Because I feel like whenever I listen to new music, I want to get swept up in it, and I want to be on the side of the guy or girl or whatever group that's released it.
If that track, say if you heard one track, right, and you really liked it, and that track was on the newest album, and they've got like 10 albums, that wouldn't bother you. You'd go straight with the newest album.
I'd listen to the new album, and if I liked it, I'd check out previous albums.
You know, that's the way that I used to go about it. Yeah, like pick an album that has a song that I know, and then use that as like my entry point. Is that sort of the route that you take?
Well,
once you're done with that, then I guess what's the next step? Say you listen to the new album.
Then I would go online and find what's considered their like See, yeah, it's different. If
Right.
it's a
So
if
you,
it's a
you would
small
go by acclaim rather
yeah,
than
if it's a small discography,
yeah.
I'll head all the way back to the beginning because I don't mind listening to
Yes.
3 or 4 albums, even if it's a slow burn. But if it's something with like a dozen albums, I'm going to go online and see what the best stuff to listen to.
No, I completely agree. As the number of albums increases, it's more like I've got to do some quality control, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
there's not enough time. And unless it's an artist that you're like become obsessed with. But if it's someone that you're gonna like, but not necessarily like love, yeah, you've got to pick the greatest hits type thing.
And if it's someone like Maiden that have had multiple singers and multiple like incarnations over the years,
right?
Or even like Van Halen to a lesser degree, you're gonna want to find the snapshot of what you like the band. Yeah, you don't want to stumble into the other one unwittingly. It's good. It'll be good to go there, but know ahead of time you're doing it.
Often it's like that especially with bands. I mean, it's going to be different for like solo artists, but like with bands, there's going to be like it almost feels like there's always distinct changes. Like especially when like a singer leaves, right, or like the main the main songwriter leaves. That like kind of bookmarks it, and you can love one era and hate another era.
Yeah, AC/DC is a big one of that. There's definitely like Bon Scott versus Brian Johnson fanboys, and see Hattie shaking his head. Van Halen then. Van Halen, Sammy Hagar versus
Diamond Dave.
David Lee Roth.
I'm not the biggest Van Halen fan, but like David Lee Roth surely has to take that, right? Definitely more iconic.
Yeah, I mean, I went with the Van Halen thing. I did go the route that you were sort of talking about, Hattie, where I bookended it at when David Lee Roth like left, and then like after that, I was just like, oh, this isn't even Van Halen anymore. Yeah. This is a different album, and the way that I approached that was I did Jack's route, where I went online and I was like, okay, I want to get into Sammy Hagar, Van Halen. Where should I begin? And so everyone was like 5150, 5150. So I checked it out. Wasn't the biggest fan, and that was the end of my listening to Sammy Hagar, Van Halen.
At least then you know. Okay, I've got this core of albums to like. I mean, another interesting one. It'd be interesting to know your thoughts. Would be Black Sabbath as well. Like, if you have any opinions about the Ozzy and Dio difference, because that's it's another band in the same vein that kind of not only changed singer but changed like stylistically in a lot of ways.
I love Dio's voice, and he's had a big impact on metal, but there's only one Black Sabbath lineup.
Yeah. I agree. The Ozzy era, like the 6 or 7 original albums, is classic. A great, like one of the best, like classic rock discographies. Even though, Dio's amazing as a vocalist, but the style changed in a way that was less enjoyable for me. What are your guys' thoughts on greatest hits albums? Because again, let's say we're talking about like a mammoth discography, and there's not necessarily anything that would stand out. Do you guys like the format of like a greatest hits? I mean, I know these days it's not a big thing, because these days with streaming you'll just get like an essentials playlist, right? But that's the same thing. But is that an approach you guys like? Like let's just do a greatest hits listen? And
I don't hate it. I think it depends on the artist, because like if you're looking to get into Pink Floyd, you're going to miss so much by listening to those songs in abstraction from where they're intended to be. But if you're looking to get into just Jason Becker, I can see him behind Dennis there.
Right.
It's tiny discography, obviously, but you're not going to miss much by having those songs being pulled off.
Right. You don't necessarily need to listen to an album front to back to get the gist of.
As long as you've heard Perpetual Burn. But like, actually, to make a like Racer X, because they've got a vocalist, like it to make it a bit more similar between the two.
Yeah.
Racer X aren't a massive like brain band when it comes to lyrics and concepts and stuff. You're not going to miss much by having whatever track from their albums pulled off and put onto a playlist. But it's a judgment you have to make per artist.
Yeah, I mean, I I try to stay away personally from like greatest hits because I think it does take some of the magic out of the experience. Even when you listen to like albums where like there might be a lot of tracks you don't like, I still enjoy that the album journey. And it kind of, I know it's like it kind of feels like a bit archaic these days, but it's still something that I enjoy a lot. I listen to albums. I don't really do any kind of like, well, I don't really do much like shuffling.
What I found as well that is like sometimes like the songs you like and the songs you don't like on an album will it like evolve.
Exactly, and you're going to miss out on that if you don't have that. Yeah.
So to go back to Jack's method, where you pick the favorite song or the song that you know, and you go to the album that you know. I use that on Mr. Big, with Mr. Big. So Mr. Big, I think they have like 3 albums. They have a few big hits, Green Tinted 60s Mind, which is like sort of their biggest hit. And another one is Addicted to That Rush. Now, I heard Addicted to That Rush first because it's got like a great bass line, obviously Billy Sheehan. Mr. Big is Paul Gilbert, Billy Sheehan, and crap, I don't remember the singer.
It's Addicted to the Rush, that's the drill one, right?
Yeah, no, that's not the drill one. I can't remember what the drill one is. I think that's off the album. That's off the album where with Green Tinted 60s Mind. But so
they've got a butt fuck of albums.
Do they?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm looking now.
Love me some Paul Gilbert.
I didn't think they did.
I'm surprised. Anyway, so their self-titled album, Addicted to That Rush, is off of their self-titled album. And initially, I would listen to that, and then all the other songs would basically, like, I don't know, I just leave it on because fuck it, I don't want to pull my iPod out and change the song. I would just leave it on. And over time, that like some of the other songs, like Take a Walk, like some of the other songs became some of my absolute favorite songs. So I went in.
100% agree. You're gonna miss out on that discovery if you go to like a hits or or a rearranging.
And the worst thing is, with the greatest hits, it's just some guy's opinion, right?
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing: like when I've been like, I've known a discography really well. When I look at some greatest hits track lists, I'm like, where's this track? Where's this track? And it triggers me. So it's kind of like if you were like unaware and you went into the greatest hits, you might think, okay, this is the best, and you're going to miss out on those deep cuts.
I've never stayed on a greatest hits, and never like if I hear the greatest hits and I don't hear anything I like, I'm going to assume I don't like it. But then they're often
a fair judgment.
Like they're often like 12 tracks long at least.
Yeah.
If I heard 12 tracks from any band and didn't hear something I liked, I would assume I didn't like it. But if I hear stuff I like on the greatest hits, I'm going to check out that album and get the context and listen to it.
It will inspire you to then.
Yeah. I assume there must be somebody out there who does this, but they're dumb if they do. I don't know why you would get a greatest hits and not explore the songs in their proper, like, intended context and order and stuff.
My how you were saying about Mr. Big, Dennis, in terms of like you'd kind of put things to the wayside and then they would come back and rotate. I had that a lot a few years ago with Sade, who I would say is like, I don't know, she seems like someone who's like commonly like thought of as like a greatest hits artist, but to people that think that, I would say no, that discography is fucking solid.
Do you mean Sade?
Don't piss me off, man. Like honestly, kind of a bit of a digression, but like hot take, Sade is one of like the best pop acts of all time.
Of all time.
Yeah.
You're putting her above Prince, above the king of pop, Michael Jackson.
She's in that tier for me.
I listened to Love Deluxe on your recommendation. That doesn't touch 3121 by Prince.
It's a good fucking album though, Matt. Well, no, it's not even good. It's great.
I did not give me another recommendation for her after this. Give me a listen to next.
I will, but I'm a bit upset. Anyway, look, my main point is that I know like an artist like her, she's gonna sell a lot of like greatest hit CDs, and people are gonna know like their hits like Smooth
Smooth
Operator.
operator.
Yeah. But for me, it's just so surface level. It's so surface level, and you're missing like the depth.
There is a lot of that where there are some bands that they have a hit that hits so hard that it just overshadows
It dominates.
everything else. Yeah. Even Mr. Big is like that, where Green Tinted 60s Mind hit at the time. I don't know, I wasn't there at the time. To sort of bring back sort of on topic, because I'm mindful that we've been going for about 20 minutes now. So I'm surprised that none of us have said Friends, because you mentioned none of us have said, we'll go talk to a friend and they'll give me a recommendation list, because you mentioned Iron Maiden, Jack, and we know someone that we used to go to school with who was a crazy Maiden fan. I'm not going to mention their name because I'm not going to blow them up in the public, but actually
they've watched this before, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I actually went to them at some because I was like, I want to get into Maiden. So I was like, mate, like you love your Maiden,
right?
Like, tell
where
me,
do you start?
Yeah, where do I start? And he was like, yeah, Killers is great. Number of the Beast, obviously, is a classic. And he pointed me in the right direction. So I'm surprised that none of us said like, find someone who's into it.
I do want to slightly go back because I was given a very specific situation. Of I'd heard a couple of tracks already. If I'm generally like, if I'm looking for new music or somebody tells me about an artist like that, literally there with Sade. If somebody is telling me about them, I'll ask them to tell me what should I listen to.
Yeah.
If I'm like, I know the artist and I know someone that likes them, I'll do what you did. If I know the artist and I don't know anyone that likes them, I'll Google it.
Yeah.
If what I have found before, though, most annoying is if I am watching a YouTube video from a musician or something like that, and they'll recommend an artist, and then you go and look, and they've got 77 albums, and you're like, I can't go and ask this person what I should fucking listen to, and and it's always some obscure person because they're trying to be all like, they're trying to be cool and recommend people that no one else knows.
Yeah,
that's a killer.
It's funny you said that because I thought you were going to be like, oh yeah, if someone's like, oh yeah, listen to this artist, listen to like their second album, and you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to listen to the fucking fourth album, all right? Whatever you say.
For which situation?
No, I was just thinking you were going to say that as just like a joke thing.
Oh.
But I completely, if someone's giving you the recommendation, it's completely out of the blue. Yeah, you might as well go with that specific recommendation. But yeah, obviously, if you're already aware of them, then you're probably going to be more inspired to do more of your own research. So I would say, yeah, I feel the same as you.
I feel like there was such a shared consciousness in school to terms with music. Like there's such an overlap between all the different groups within the student body that you're like, I know I'm never more, it's like that 6 degrees. I'm never more than 6 degrees away from somebody who has heard of this artist I've just discovered.
Yeah.
I can go and ask, like, and have the knock-on effect of getting a good recommendation.
But that comes back to kind of like when you're that age, you're kind of like trying to find out who you are, and like part of that, like there's going to be so much importance in terms of kind of being part of like a clique, right? So like the kind of things you like will have to in some ways align with the people you're with. Like now, as like an older person, I found that that's not important at all, but it's really important when you're in school, I think, for the majority of people.
Well, school has like a social circle, and it's a consistent social circle. So I don't know, Jack, like, do you find it harder now that we're out of it, that to find people who you can talk to about music?
No, but I think I'm in quite a unique position being a music teacher. I'm always around it. I feel like otherwise I would have to. I feel like before I did this, I had lots of people that liked music, but not many people who had a similar breadth of taste in music. So I could but I could have really, really in-depth conversations about grime, and new grime albums would come out that I didn't know about, and they'd be able to give me the lowdown on why it was good, what the artist had done before, how this was different, like all this good stuff. But it was specifically grime that I could chat to this person about. There was someone else that spent a long time trying to get me into electronica and techno and dance music and stuff. It didn't work, but I knew I could go, if I ever did want it, I knew I could go to that person for that genre. But yeah, like generally since leaving school there's been less, like, I guess it's because you have less people to go to in general, whereas in school you might have those two people, but you'd also have a rock person, and you'd also have you'd have you'd have the grungers, and then you'd have the chavs, and then you'd have the goths, and then you tick all your boxes.
I think the other thing as well. I guess it's going a bit off topic, but I think kind of like the I kind of have the sense that kind of like the music scenes is not really a thing anymore, and kind of the majority of people listen to a wide variety of things. I think that's probably partly due to like the ease of access, with streaming versus back in the day when you could just you had a bit of money and you could buy a CD and that was it, and you had to be like diligent about your choices.
One person would LimeWire or something, and then you'd go and you'd spend you'd get your Sony Ericsson Walkman phone out on the desk in a lesson so they could infrared you the track.
You'd do the LimeWire download. You'd hope it wasn't some weird porn. That your parents are going to walk. You'd hope it was a genuine audio file that was actually the album. It was just more difficult.
The amount of albums that I downloaded that were just some other person's album, like not a known artist. It's just this one person thinking like some record exec's going to be on LimeWire downloading this Prince album. They're going to hear me and they're going to look me up.
I definitely did that before I got the complete wrong album, and then it was a mindfuck. So I guess my main point is like now, because it's so easy, right? Everyone's just streaming or YouTube or whatever, and you can just get a song within 5 seconds or get an album within 5 seconds. That you kind of like your tastes are going to naturally be more broad because it's easy to get everything. So instead of being like, okay, I know I like this genre, I only have a limited amount of time or money, I've got to invest in this. Now the world's your oyster.
It's just a button click, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can get into anything. It's just how much time do you have to listen to a full album?
Yeah, and I'd probably say since I was young, I always liked a broad range of stuff. But as I've grown up, it's gotten even broader.
That might actually be more common. I don't know. This is worth. Do you think people listen to playlists on Spotify more, and so because of that, they're exposed to a wider range of music?
I'd imagine that's probably like the predominant way a lot of people enjoy music. It's not the way I would. I think predominantly people are going to be relying on things like playlists.
I wouldn't necessarily correlate listening to more playlists and getting that wider musical
right, because playlists are going to be
because they'll find something that fits a channel. Whereas if you're back in the day when you're there's further back in the day, but back in our day when you're trading CDs and stuff, like you'd get a CD from someone and then you'd be like, oh, this was cool, and they'd have like a limited choice of what they could recommend to you to give you. So if like you're like, you listen to Pantera and you're like, oh, this is sick, I really like it, and you give it back and you're like, okay, cool, I don't have any more Pantera, I don't know, like, but maybe I could give you like a Kiss album or something. So like you're still within the genre, but it's a little jump, and then your next jump is to Hendrix.
Pretty fast.
But then like your next jump is to Hendrix because they don't have any more rock, but they've got like Hendrix is like early rock, and then from there you take another leap and you've ended up miles away from Pantera because of this person's personal taste. Whereas now you've got so much, it's almost harder to find. Like the can't see the forest for the trees or whatever, trees for the forest.
Yeah. It's just a wide net. You're just casting such a wide net.
Which is probably why stuff like the websites that you guys were talking about in the start have become so popular, and people use them so much now.
Just root out signal from noise, really.
Yeah.
It's like a very efficient approach, but at the same time, versus like using something like a website like Aggregator versus just, for me, like versus just putting on a playlist, is that it still gives you the control. Do you know what I mean? I say when you set the parameters of what you want to find versus, oh, I'm going to try this playlist. The playlist it's still kind of like up in the air. You're taking a chance, which I don't like that much, as I kind of like to be like quite controlling. So that's why I like something like what I mentioned as a way to discover stuff.
So we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on approaching an artist with a large discography?
It's situational. That's the answer. It's very situational. Like we said, like, number of albums. If the artist had a big stylistic change, or that it was a band that changed members, these are all going to be factors. And it's very hard to kind of know that before you start, right? Hindsight's like a wonderful thing, but
I think the most important thing that's probably going to be universal as well is just to build the skills that allow you to quickly evaluate through a little bit of research whether it's an artist worth doing a lot of research on. Because if you're looking into it to begin with and you're like, I'm not 100%, I need to really drill down and figure out which of these 17 albums I need to listen to first, that's cool. If you're just start looking into it and you're like, I'm still not that sold, is it worth your time to dig into it? Because it could just be more of the same.
So what, sift through quicker so that you don't waste your time?
Well, yeah, I guess just like the skills, like critically viewing what other people have said about it, listening with a more critical ear on the tracks that you have heard on playlists or whatever, or that sort of thing.
It's definitely an important point. I was going to say one thing you raised, Dennis, which I completely agree with, is the fact that sometimes you have to kind of give an album's time to breathe, and things that you didn't like you end up liking. So that highlights the value in kind of not necessarily dismissing things for like what's great now, in terms of like always going to the best sort of most acclaimed. It's nice having that full journey where things will become better one week versus the next. A lot of like my favorite albums I wasn't that hot on upon first listen, so if I just had an instant reaction, then I would have missed out on some like stuff that I really enjoyed long term.
Yeah.
What about you?
Not much to add, really. Yeah, I think you guys. I think we hit quite a lot of the major points with it. Yeah. Let an album breathe. Pay attention to who you should be listening to and what you should be listening to. But I don't know. This sounds like really, really generic and middle of the road. But I would say it doesn't really matter which method you use, whether it's going down the route of a greatest hits album, because I did try that. It's not my favorite way of doing it, where you go down the greatest hits and then you, I don't know, pick out the album that has the favorite tracks that you've got on it. I would say, find whichever method works for you. And for me, the method that works is crowdsource the selection of your entry point, and then when I tend to be pretty critical with what a community is suggesting. So it's like, so you say this is the best Radiohead album. All right, let me see what the community is saying is the best Radiohead album, because this is probably going to be the essence of what Radiohead is. Cool. So, shall we bring this to a close?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. If you agree with what we or disagree with with some of our opinions, let us know down in the comments below. Look out for our podcast wherever you get podcasts, and subscribe to it, and subscribe to our channel.
Quick mention. So you want to tell them what we're doing next weekend, or this coming weekend?
Oh, yeah. So next Saturday, we will be doing a review of Megan Thee Stallion's latest album, Good News.
Debut, technically.
Debut album. I was going to say, Hadi, you're the one that suggested this. So where did you hear about her?
I've just heard songs, like singles, to be honest. some I've liked, some that I haven't. I'll discuss that in more details, but I just thought it'd be an interesting one to do. I haven't listened to the album yet, but yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one.
Looking forward to it. All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Cool.
Later.
Later.
Safe.